I'm Mark, I'm 32 years old, and my own brother, backed by my entire family, tried to steal my house right out from under me. Before I tell you how a single, desperate phone call brought his entire deceitful scheme crashing down in front of the police, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It all came to a head on a Saturday morning. One of those picture-perfect, crisp autumn mornings at the lake. The kind of morning that's supposed to be a cure for the soul. The kind of deep, resonant quiet that sinks right into your bones and pushes out the noise of the city. I'd driven up to my grandfather's cabin the day before, desperate to escape, to think, to just breathe air that didn't feel heavy with conflict. I was standing in the small, familiar kitchen, nursing a hot mug of black coffee, gazing out the window at the water. The sun was just beginning its slow climb, starting to burn the silver mist off the lake's glassy surface. This was peace, my sanctuary, and then I heard it, a low, guttural rumble that didn't belong. The crunch and pop of heavy tires on the gravel of my private driveway. It wasn't the sound of a neighbor's car. It was bigger, heavier, a work vehicle. My stomach instantly twisted into a tight, cold knot. I moved from the kitchen to the front living room window, peering cautiously through the blinds. My heart started a frantic, percussive hammering against my ribs. It was a moving truck, a full-sized, 20-foot U-Haul. Its orange and white graphics a grotesque slash of color against the natural greens and browns of the woods. It was backing its way down my long driveway with an air of absolute entitlement, and right behind it, like a loyal squire, was my brother Finn's beat-up Ford pickup. A wave of nausea washed over me. This couldn't be happening. It was a paranoid fantasy, a nightmare. I threw the front door open, letting the screen door slam shut behind me with a bang that echoed in the stillness. The cool morning air felt like an electric shock on my skin. Finn was there, already out of his truck, directing two burly movers. He had a clipboard in his hand, pointing toward my front door with a smug, confident grin plastered on his face. He saw me, and he had the unmitigated gall to raise his hand and give a little wave. A cheerful, casual wave, as if I were just another neighbor dropping by to say hello. And then my eyes locked on her. His girlfriend, Amber. She was wrestling a large cardboard box out of the back of the pickup. On the side, in thick black marker, was one word, nursery. She was pregnant, her belly a perfect, round curve under her sweater, and she was looking up at the cabin with this dreamy, possessive look on her face, like all her wishes had just been granted by a benevolent universe. Finn strode over to me, that infuriating grin never leaving his face. "Morning, bro," he said, his voice offensively casual. "Figured we'd get an early start. Beat the traffic." My own voice felt like it was trapped behind a wall of glass. When it finally came out, it was a strangled whisper. "What is this, Finn? What in the hell do you think you're doing?" He chuckled, a low, arrogant sound that made my skin crawl. "What does it look like we're doing? We're moving in." He gestured expansively at the cabin, my cabin. "It's a done deal. We're home." Before I could even process the audacity, he pointed toward the house. Amber was now on the porch, setting down the box and trying the front doorknob, which I had thankfully locked. Her actions, so casual and proprietary, were a fresh stab of betrayal. This wasn't a request. This was an occupation. And as I stood there, frozen in a state of utter disbelief, I knew this was just the first move in a war I never wanted to fight. To understand the sheer, mind-bending insanity of that morning, you have to understand the three pillars of this conflict. My family, the cabin, and my brother, Finn. They're all tangled together like a knot of old fishing line. The cabin wasn't just a building to me. It was a living piece of my history. It was my grandfather's masterpiece, built with his own two hands on 2 acres of pristine lakeside land he'd bought back in the 70s for what would today be a rounding error. He was a carpenter, a true craftsman from a bygone era. For over 40 years, he'd poured his sweat, his skill, and his love into that place. Every beam in the vaulted ceiling, every hand-laid stone in the massive fireplace, was a testament to his character. He passed away 3 years ago and left the cabin to me, solely to me. His will was ironclad, a fact that my parents conveniently chose to forget. Grandpa knew what he was doing. He knew the family dynamics better than anyone. My wife, Emma, and I treated the cabin like a sacred trust. We'd escape the city almost every weekend. It was where the noise of our lives faded away and we could just be. It was where I felt an unshakable connection to my grandpa. Shortly after he died, while clearing out his workshop, I found his old journal. It was filled with sketches and measurements, but tucked between the diagrams were his thoughts. On one yellowed page, dated from a time I was just a boy, I found a passage that became my North Star. I remember sitting on an old wooden stool, the air thick with the smell of sawdust and oil, and reading his strong, deliberate cursive. It was a memory of him teaching me to use a handsaw. I must have been 8 or 9. My cut was crooked, and I was frustrated. He'd put his big, calloused hand over mine. "Mark," he'd written in the journal, recounting the day. "I told the boy today, a straight cut doesn't come from force. It comes from a steady hand and a clear line. It's the same with life. You decide your line, you mark it clearly, and you don't let anyone push your hand off course. A man who lets others blur his lines will never build anything that lasts." That memory, that lesson, was what this was all about. Now, my brother Finn's entire life has been a study in blurred lines. He's 6 years younger, and from the moment he was born, he was the golden child who could do no wrong. He'd flash a charming smile, and my parents would melt. He dropped out of community college twice, drifted between bartender gigs and half-baked entrepreneurial ventures, and possessed a truly breathtaking talent for financial self-sabotage. I remember his most spectacular failure, Finn's Fresh Fins, a tropical fish delivery service. He'd convinced my parents to loan him $10,000 for tanks, equipment, and exotic fish. I'd warned them. I told them Finn didn't have the discipline, that the business plan was written on a napkin. "Oh, Mark, you're just jealous of his ambition," my mother had said, her voice sharp with disapproval. "The boy's got ideas. You have to support ideas." My dad had boomed, already writing the check. 6 months later, the business was belly up. A faulty heater had killed half his expensive stock, and he'd forgotten to file the proper paperwork. The 10 grand was gone. Did Finn learn a lesson? No. My parents concluded the economy was just too tough for a small business to survive. They never once held him accountable, and they were right there to cover his rent the next month. I wasn't jealous of his ambition. I was terrified by his lack of consequences. This pattern went into overdrive 6 months ago when Finn started dating Amber. She was a single mom to a sweet, bubbly 3-year-old named Lily. On the surface, it seemed like a positive step. But in reality, it just gave Finn a new, more sympathetic justification for his endless needs. They were squeezed into a tiny, run-down apartment, and his part-time bar job wasn't cutting it. That's when the comments started. The first time was at my dad's 60th birthday party. In the middle of opening presents, Finn let out a theatrical sigh. "Man, you and Emma are so lucky," he said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "Having that huge cabin just sitting there empty most of the week. Must be nice to have that kind of peace and quiet." I just smiled tightly. "It's a great getaway," I said, trying to steer the conversation back to my dad. But he was relentless. It became his favorite topic at every family gathering. It was like a nervous tick, a constant, probing needle. "I bet the air is so clean up there," he'd muse. "Be great for a kid's development. All that concrete and exhaust in the city. It's just not healthy." My mom, Carol, would immediately latch on. "Oh, he's absolutely right, Mark. A child needs fresh air. I worry constantly about little Lily in that stuffy apartment with the sirens all night." My dad, Dennis, would nod along sagely, a forkful of mashed potatoes halfway to his mouth. A little nature is what they need. Character building. It was a perfectly synchronized, unspoken campaign of guilt. They were methodically building a case, brick by emotional brick, and I was the defendant. My cousin Rachel, who was visiting from Seattle, saw it with crystal-clear eyes. She sat quietly through one of these Sunday dinners, her expression growing more and more tense as Finn waxed lyrical about the wasted space and how the schools near the lake were in a different league. Later, as she was leaving, she grabbed my arm. "Be careful, Mark," she said, her voice low and urgent. My husband's brother, David, pulled this exact same playbook about their parents' beach house. It started with jokes, then suggestions, and it ended with David changing the locks and them having to get lawyers involved. Don't be naive. This isn't a hint. It's a plan. Her warning was like a bucket of ice water. She was right. This wasn't just Finn being Finn. This was deliberate. I decided I had to be proactive. I couldn't let this fester. The next week, I called my mom. "Hey, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice light and casual. "I was thinking we should have a family dinner this Sunday. My treat. But I want to make it a proper meeting. I want to talk about the cabin. Get everything out on the table so there are no hard feelings or misunderstandings." "Oh, what a wonderful idea," she chirped, her voice practically vibrating with enthusiasm. "A family meeting. Yes. Let's clear the air once and for all." The eagerness in her voice should have been a red flag the size of Texas. I thought I was setting the agenda, being the responsible adult. In reality, I had just handed my mother a formal invitation to stage an ambush. When I told Emma about my plan, her face clouded with worry. Emma is a natural peacekeeper. Her default setting is to smooth things over, to avoid confrontation at all costs. It's one of the things I love about her, but it was a liability in this situation. "Are you sure that's a good idea, honey?" she asked, twisting a strand of her blonde hair nervously. "It might just pour gasoline on the fire. Maybe if we just ignore him, he'll get tired of it and move on to something else." "No, he won't," I said, my voice firmer than I intended. I saw her flinch slightly. "This is different, Em. He's got Amber and Lily as leverage now. We have to draw a clear line in the sand." My grandfather's line. Her sigh was heavy with resignation, a sound I was starting to know well. "Okay, Mark, if you really think it's for the best." Before the planned dinner, I drove up to the cabin by myself for a night. I needed to ground myself to connect with the source of the conflict. Old Tom, my grandfather's best friend and my de facto uncle, saw my car and ambled over from his place next door. He was in his late 70s, tough as a gnarled oak root, with piercing blue eyes that saw everything. "Saw your brother's truck snooping around here last week," he said, not as a question, but as a statement of fact as we sat on the porch. "He didn't stop, just drove by real slow, twice. Looked like he was casing the joint." "He's getting ideas, Tom," I admitted, my voice heavy. Tom spat a stream of tobacco juice into the dirt with surgical precision. "Happened with your granddad, you know, his own cousin, Earl. A real piece of work. Thought just because they were blood, he was entitled to a piece of this place, a key to the front door. Your granddad had to sit him down right on these steps and tell him, 'Earl, my love for you as my family ends where my property line begins.' Some people only understand hard boundaries, Mark. They see kindness as weakness. Don't you ever forget that." His words, echoing my grandfather's journal, solidified my resolve. This wasn't just about a house. It was about principle. It was about respecting the man who built it and the lessons he taught me. I thought I was ready. I thought I was prepared for a difficult conversation. I had no idea I was walking into a trial where the verdict had already been decided. The family meeting I had so naively arranged was at a neutral location, a local Italian restaurant with a private back room. I thought the public setting would force a level of civility. I was wrong. It just gave them a captive audience and a stage for their performance. Emma and I arrived first. She was a bundle of nerves, shredding her paper napkin into a pile of white confetti on the table beside her plate. "Just be calm, Mark. Please," she whispered as my parents walked in. "Let's just listen. No yelling." My heart sank. They weren't alone. Trailing behind them were Finn and Amber. And Amber was holding little Lily by the hand, her other hand resting prominently on her pregnant belly. It was a cheap, transparent, and utterly brilliant move. How could anyone be the bad guy in front of a sweet 3-year-old and an expectant mother? I had called a meeting to draw a line, and they had brought a human shield. The small talk over appetizers was excruciating. We talked about the weather, about sports, about a new show my dad was watching. The tension was so thick you could have cut it with a bread knife. Then, as the waiter cleared the main course plates, my mother, Carol, clapped her hands together with a sickeningly sweet, theatrical smile. "Well," she said brightly, her voice echoing slightly in the quiet room. Since Mark was so thoughtful to get us all together to clear the air about the cabin situation, I took the liberty of preparing a few thoughts. I felt the blood drain from my face. She pulled a neatly folded piece of paper from her purse. This wasn't a discussion. It was a prosecution. My meeting had been officially and irrevocably hijacked. "First, let's talk about the practicalities," she began, unfolding the paper and putting on her reading glasses with a flourish. "The issue of security. An empty house, especially one in a secluded area, is a prime target for break-ins, for vandals. Having Finn and Amber there full-time would be a natural deterrent. It's just common sense, Mark. It's for the good of the property." My father, Dennis, chimed in right on cue, like they had rehearsed this. "And maintenance. That's a big piece of land, son. You and Emma are only there on weekends. Finn could handle the lawn, the gutters, keep an eye on the plumbing in the winter. It would be a huge help to you. He'd be earning his keep, contributing." Finn nodded earnestly, his face a mask of sincerity. "I treat it like it was my own, Mark. You know I would. I'm good with my hands. I could finally get that back deck restained for you. Fix that leaky faucet in the guest bath." I wanted to scream. Finn hadn't successfully assembled a piece of IKEA furniture in his life, let alone maintained a 2-acre property. But I held my tongue, gripping the edge of the table, waiting for my turn. Then it was Amber's turn, the emotional main event. She had a pristine file folder with her. She opened it and slid a glossy, colorful brochure across the table to me. It was for Northwood Elementary, the highly rated school near the lake. "I just want what's best for Lily," she said, her voice soft and trembling with just the right amount of maternal desperation. She put her free hand on her belly. "And for the new baby, the schools in our neighborhood, the things you hear, it's just not safe. Here," she pushed another paper forward, a printout from a school rating website. "These are the test scores, the graduation rates. Look at the difference. This isn't about getting a free house, Mark. It's about giving my children a chance at a safe, happy childhood. The kind of childhood you and Finn had." It was a masterclass in emotional blackmail. Every word, every gesture, was a brushstroke in a portrait of me as the villain. The selfish, hoarding older brother, sitting on a paradise that could save these poor, innocent children from a life of mediocrity and danger. Lily, as if on cue, started to get fussy. My mom immediately scooped her up, rocking her gently and glaring at me over the child's head. The unspoken message was a sledgehammer. How can you say no to this beautiful, innocent child? Finally, the barrage stopped. They all looked at me, a jury of 4, their faces a nauseating mixture of smug expectation and feigned, loving concern. It was my turn to speak. "I hear everything you're saying," I started, my voice tight as a guitar string. "I understand your concerns, but my answer is no." A collective, theatrical gasp went around the table. Finn looked genuinely shocked, as if the possibility of refusal had never even entered his mind. "The cabin is my and Emma's private home. It's our sanctuary. It was my grandfather's specific, written wish that I have it. It is not a family timeshare, and it is not the solution to Finn's financial irresponsibility." My mother's face, which had been so soft and concerned, hardened into a mask of cold fury. "Mark, this is family, and family helps each other. Sometimes that requires a little personal sacrifice." "This isn't a little sacrifice," I shot back, my voice finally rising, the control slipping. "You're asking us to give up our home, our privacy, our peace of mind. It's a second home," Finn interjected, his voice dripping with years of accumulated resentment. "A vacation home you use 2 days a week. We would barely be in your way." It was then that I turned to Emma. I was drowning and I needed my lifeguard. I needed her to throw me a rope, to stand with me, to be my partner. But she was looking down at her lap, her face pale, her hands twisting her napkin into a mangled rope. She wouldn't meet my eyes. And then she spoke, her voice so quiet it was almost lost in the hum of the restaurant's air conditioning. Maybe we could think about it? Just for a little while? A few weeks, maybe? Just to help them get on their feet. The air went out of the room. Finn's eyes lit up with predatory glee. He seized on her words like a shark sensing blood in the water. See? Emma gets it. She's reasonable. Thank you, Emma. My mother smiled, a victor's smile, reaching across the table to pat Emma's hand. Thank you, dear. I knew you had a good heart. I knew you'd understand what it means to be a family. I felt a cold, sharp-edged betrayal twist in my gut. It was a physical sensation, like I'd been punched. In front of my entire family, my wife had just handed them the victory. She hadn't supported me. She had offered them a compromise that I never would, and in doing so, she had validated their entire manipulative campaign. She had made me the lone obstacle, the bad guy. The rest of the dinner was a blur of forced chatter and triumphant smiles from their side of the table. I was numb. I paid the bill in a daze and we left. The car ride home was thick with a silence that was heavier and more painful than any argument we had ever had. The moment we walked through our apartment door, the dam broke. What was that? I demanded, whirling to face her, my voice raw with hurt. What the hell was that, Emma? I was trying to keep the peace, she cried, her eyes immediately filling with tears. They were ganging up on you. I was just trying to find a middle ground, to de-escalate. There is no middle ground with them, I yelled, my voice echoing in the small space. You don't compromise with a bulldozer. You stand your ground, or you get flattened. They ambushed me and you sided with them. You handed them the keys. That's not fair, Mark. They're your family. This whole thing is tearing us apart. And I was just trying to stop the bleeding. You didn't stop the bleeding. You opened a new wound. I shot back, the words tasting like acid. You showed them that we're divided. You showed them that I'm the problem. And now they're going to push harder than ever. You don't get it. You just don't understand what that cabin means to me. Then make me understand, she sobbed, her body shaking. Because all I see right now is it destroying our marriage. The fight went on for what felt like hours. A raw, ugly battle that dredged up every resentment and insecurity. It ended not with a resolution, but with sheer emotional exhaustion. We collapsed into a bitter silence, sleeping in separate rooms for the first time in our 7 years together. The next day, after a tense, silent breakfast, we had an emergency session with our marriage counselor, Dr. Martinez. She listened patiently, her face calm, as we laid out the whole ugly mess. Mark, she said, looking at me with kind but direct eyes, your feelings of betrayal are valid. You went into a battle expecting your partner to have your back, and you felt abandoned. And Emma, she turned to my wife, your desire to avoid conflict is a powerful instinct. But in this case, your attempt to compromise was heard by your in-laws as agreement, and by your husband as a betrayal. You were trying to solve two different problems. She helped us talk, really talk. For the first time since the fight, we listened to each other without interrupting. But the wound was still raw. That evening, I knew I couldn't stay in the apartment. The air was too thick with what we hadn't said. I need to go to the cabin, I told Emma, my voice heavy. Alone. I need to clear my head. I need to go to the one place left that feels sane and just think about all of this. She nodded, her eyes full of a pain that mirrored my own. She didn't try to stop me. I understand, she said softly. Go. Just be safe. I packed a bag, feeling like a refugee in my own life. I was running away from my family, from the pressure, from the gaping crack that had just formed in the foundation of my marriage. I just wanted to get to the lake. I just wanted to feel the peace of my grandfather's house settle over me. I had no idea that the war wasn't over. It was about to follow me to my only sanctuary. Chukchan Roy, Kautra Loy Truak Du Chua Hontan. Twa si viet tip ka trinemot catch lean mak. Twan Thursday nium gat tat ca kaku ka ve du dai. Fong catch va noi dung ban de dua ra. Driving north on Friday afternoon felt like a pilgrimage. With every mile I put between myself and the city, I felt a physical unclamping in my shoulders, a loosening of the knot that had taken up permanent residence at the base of my skull. The gray, oppressive concrete jungle gave way to rolling hills ablaze with the fiery oranges and reds of deep autumn. By the time I turned onto the winding 2-mile dirt road that led to the cabin, I was breathing easier. This was right. This was the only thing I could do. I pulled into the gravel driveway and killed the engine. The silence was immediate and profound, broken only by the caw of a distant crow and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. I got out of the car and just stood there for a full minute, letting the clean, sharp, pine-scented air fill my lungs. It smelled like my childhood. It smelled like my grandfather. It smelled like sanity. I spent the rest of the day in a quiet, melancholy haze. I unpacked my small overnight bag, built a fire in the hearth more for the comforting crackle than for the warmth, and sat in my grandfather's worn, brown leather armchair. It still had the faint scent of his pipe tobacco embedded in the leather. I found his old workshop journal on the bookshelf, its cover soft with age, and started flipping through the pages again. His strong, confident handwriting felt like a conversation across time. He wrote about the challenges of building the roof trusses by himself in a thunderstorm, the deep satisfaction of fitting the final heavy window pane in the living room, the simple joy of watching me, as a gap-toothed little boy, catch my first sunfish off the very dock he'd built. It was a chronicle of love, labor, and integrity. This place wasn't just wood and nails. It was his story, my story, and I felt a fresh, hot wave of determination. I wouldn't let them tarnish this. I wouldn't let them take it. Just before the sun began to dip below the treeline, casting long shadows across the lake, old Tom ambled over from his place. He moved with the slow, deliberate pace of a man who was in no hurry, carrying 2 magnificent trout, already gutted and cleaned, glistening on a piece of wax paper. "Figured you could use a real dinner," he grunted, his voice like gravel. He handed the fish to me. "A man can't think straight on an empty stomach." "Thanks, Tom. You're a lifesaver." We sat on the porch steps as the sky turned a bruised, spectacular palette of purple and orange. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't need to. He just sat with me, a comfortable, solid presence. "That brother of yours," he said finally, staring out at the darkening water. "He's got the gimmies. A bad case of it. Sees what other people have built, thinks he's entitled to it just 'cause he wants it. Wants the harvest without ever planting a seed." "My parents don't help," I said, my voice flat and tired. "Nope," he agreed, shaking his head slowly. "They're watering the weed and then wondering why it's choking out the garden. Sometimes, Mark, you gotta be the one to pull it up by the roots. It ain't pretty, and it feels rough, but it's the only way to save what's good." His simple, country wisdom cut through all the noise in my head. He was right. I couldn't keep trimming the leaves. I had to pull the root. We sat in comfortable silence for a while longer before he got up to leave, slapping me gently on the back. "You need anything, you holler. Day or night." I went inside, cooked the trout with lemon and herbs from the small garden my grandmother used to keep, and felt a fragile sense of peace settle over me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was in the right place, doing the right thing. Then, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was my best friend since kindergarten, Jason. "Hey man, sorry to bother you up there," he said, his voice laced with concern. "But something weird just happened, and I thought you should know." "What's up?" I asked, a familiar cold dread creeping up my spine. "Finn just called me," Jason said. "He wanted to know if he could borrow my truck this weekend." Jason owned a construction company. His truck was a heavy-duty Ford F-250, the kind you use for serious hauling. "Why?" I asked, though a sickening certainty was already forming in my gut. "That's the thing." He was being all cagey about it. Said he had a big move planned and needed the payload capacity. When I pushed him for details, He mentioned he was heading up toward the lake area. I told him the truck was in the shop for repairs. It's not, but dude, it felt really off. I just had a bad feeling in my gut. You sure everything's okay up there? Yeah. I lied. My throat suddenly desert dry. Yeah, man. Everything's fine. Thanks for the heads up. I appreciate it. I hung up the phone, my hand trembling. So it wasn't just an idea anymore. It was an active plan. A big move. He was going to try something. He was really going to do it. The peace I'd felt just moments before evaporated like mist on a hot morning, replaced by a gnawing, acidic anxiety. He wouldn't dare. Would he? I walked through the cabin, double-checking the old, flimsy locks on the doors and windows, knowing they wouldn't stop a determined thief, let alone an entitled brother. Meanwhile, back in the city, Emma was living in her own private, silent hell. The apartment, usually a cozy refuge, felt vast and empty. The silence was a physical presence, a constant, gaping reminder of our fight, of the wedge that had been driven between us. She told me later that she paced the floors for hours, replaying the disastrous dinner, replaying our ugly argument, her mind a relentless loop of recriminations. She felt the crushing weight of my accusation, that she had betrayed me. She was angry at me for my stubbornness, for not being willing to bend an inch. But a deeper, more troubling feeling was taking root, a profound anger at herself. She knew in her gut that I was right. Her attempt to keep the peace had been an act of cowardice, not diplomacy. In her desperate attempt to avoid the family's disapproval, she had sacrificed my trust. She had thrown me to the wolves to quiet their howling. Unable to sit still, she started cleaning, a frantic, mindless tidying to keep her hands and mind busy. She went to my desk in the small office nook, intending to sort a pile of mail that had accumulated. Underneath the stack of catalogs and bills was a small, dusty cardboard box she'd never paid much attention to. It had been moved from our old apartment to this one, always relegated to a closet shelf. The label on the side, in my mom's neat handwriting, said, "Mark's old letters and school stuff." On a whim, driven by a desperate need for a distraction, she opened it. Inside, beneath old report cards and a little league trophy, were letters. Not letters I'd received. They were letters I had written. Specifically, a series of letters addressed to my grandfather, all dated in the months after he had passed away. I'd never sent them, of course. It was just my way of grieving, of talking to him when the silence he left behind became too loud. Emma had never known they existed. She sank to the floor, leaning against the desk, and began to read. Her hands started to shake as she read my words, raw and unfiltered. Words I never intended for anyone else to see. I wrote about how lost I felt without him, how he was my compass and I was now spinning in circles. I wrote about how going up to the cabin was the only thing that made me feel close to him. She read one letter where I described my fear of not living up to his legacy. "You built everything in your life with your own 2 hands, Grandpa," I had written. "The cabin, your business, your family. I feel like I'm just trying to hold onto this one piece of you, this house you left me, and I'm terrified I'm going to fail. Everyone sees a vacation home. They don't see the sweat on the wood. They don't see your knuckles, all scarred from a slipped chisel. It's not just a building. It's my connection to you. It's a reminder of what a man is supposed to be, and I feel like I'm falling short every single day." She read another, written late one night after a brutal week at work. "I sat in your workshop today, Grandpa. I just sat there on the stool for an hour. Still smells like sawdust and old oil. I found that half-finished birdhouse we were making, the one for the wrens. I remember you showing me how to bevel the edges. You had so much patience. My own father, he loves me, I know, but he never had that kind of patience. He never taught me how to build anything. You did. This place is the only place on earth where I feel like I know who I am." Tears streamed down Emma's face, silent and hot. In that moment, sitting on our apartment floor surrounded by my clumsy, heartfelt grief, she finally, truly understood. It wasn't about a house. It wasn't about a vacation spot. It wasn't about stubbornness or being unwilling to share. It was about my identity. It was about my grief. It was about my desperate attempt to hold onto the legacy of the most important male role model in my life. And she, in her attempt to placate my manipulative family, had treated it like it was just a piece of real estate, a bargaining chip to be negotiated away for a temporary, fragile peace. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. She saw with sickening, absolute clarity the profound depth of her mistake. She hadn't just failed to support me. She had actively invalidated the deepest part of my soul. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed her phone, her fingers fumbling with the screen as she swiped through her contacts. She called me. I answered on the second ring, my voice tense from my conversation with Jason. "What's wrong?" "I'm sorry," she sobbed, her voice thick and broken, raw with emotion. "Oh, Mark, I am so sorry. I get it now. I finally, truly get it. I was completely confused." "Emma, what are you talking about? What's happened?" "The letters," she choked out between sobs. "I found the box. The letters to your grandpa. I read them. I understand now what the cabin really is. It's not a thing, it's you. I am so sorry. I'm coming up there. I'm leaving right now." A wave of emotion so powerful it almost buckled my knees washed over me. Relief, forgiveness, a deep, aching love. "Okay," I said, my own voice cracking. "Okay, Em, come home." She was coming. We were going to face this together. But I had no idea that Finn's plan was already in motion. His truck was already loaded, and he was going to get there long before she would. The storm was no longer gathering. It was about to break right over my head. I woke before dawn the next morning, having slept in restless, 30-minute increments. Every creak of the old cabin, every rustle of leaves outside, had my heart leaping into my throat. I abandoned any hope of sleep, made a pot of coffee that was thick enough to stand a spoon in, and took my post on the front porch. I sat in a wooden rocking chair, a silent sentinel wrapped in a thick wool blanket, watching the black sky slowly fade to a deep, bruised indigo. I was waiting for Emma. I was waiting for the sunrise. Instead, I got the rumble. It was the same sound from Jason's call, from my nightmares, but this time it was real, visceral, and getting closer. The unmistakable crunch and pop of heavy tires on the long gravel driveway. My blood ran cold. I stood up, my coffee mug forgotten on the railing, and peered into the pre-dawn gloom. There it was, the U-Haul. Its hulking white form was a monstrous intrusion in the tranquil woods, its headlights cutting through the darkness. And right behind it, its own lights on high beam, was Finn's pickup. This was it. The invasion had begun. I didn't wait. I didn't hesitate. I flew down the porch steps, my bare feet pounding on the cold, damp earth. I reached the end of the driveway just as the truck shuddered to a halt, its diesel engine idling with a menacing growl that seemed to disrespect the sacred quiet of the place. Finn hopped out of his truck, a ball cap pulled low, that same infuriatingly smug look on his face. Amber got out of the passenger side, clutching her purse to her chest like a shield. Two beefy movers, looking bored and tired, emerged from the cab of the big rig. "Morning, bro," Finn said, his voice offensively breezy. "Told you we'd get an early start. The early bird gets the worm, right? Get out," I said. My voice was dangerously low, shaking with a cold, pure rage I had never felt before in my life. "Turn that truck around and get off my property. You have 10 seconds before I call the police." Finn actually laughed, a short, barking laugh. He shook his head like I was a hysterical child throwing a tantrum. "Oh, Mark, don't be so dramatic. We're past all this. It's happening. You can either help us unload or you can stand there and pout. But either way, we're moving in. It's for the best. You'll see." "You are trespassing," I said again, stepping forward, physically planting my feet between him and the cabin. I was a human fence. "This is my house. You are not welcome here." From across the lake, I saw a flicker of movement. It was my neighbor, Dave, the retired cop. He was out in his canoe for his daily pre-dawn paddle and had clearly noticed the headlights and the massive truck. He started paddling closer to my shoreline, a silent, curious observer. His presence, even from a distance, gave me a small sliver of courage. I wasn't entirely alone. Amber stepped forward, trying her soft, manipulative approach, her voice a gentle coo. "Mark, please," she said, putting a hand on her pregnant belly in that now familiar gesture. "Don't make this hard on everyone. We're family. We just want a safe place for our baby. Think of the baby." "I am thinking of my family," I snapped, my patience shredded. "My wife and me. Find a safe place you can actually afford. This one is not for you." Finn's face darkened instantly. The smugness vanished, replaced by a nasty, entitled sneer. "You know what, Mark? Your opinion doesn't even matter anymore. We don't actually need your permission." "What the hell are you talking about?" I spat, taking another step closer. "My name is on the deed. It's my property. My signature is the only one that matters." And then he delivered the line he had been saving. The lie he had built his entire pathetic, desperate plan upon. He delivered it with the relish of a villain in a cheap movie. "Yeah, but you're not the only decision-maker in your marriage, are you?" he said, his eyes glittering with malicious triumph. "Emma gave us the green light. She told us to come ahead. She's tired of your selfishness, your obsession with this old house. She gets it. Your wife gave us permission, Mark. So you lose." The world tilted on its axis. For one horrifying, poisonous split second, doubt wormed its way into my brain. The fight we'd had, her desperation to keep the peace. Could she have caved? Gone behind my back? No, not after her phone call. Not after the tears. Not my Emma. "You're a liar," I said, my voice quiet but steely. "Am I?" Finn pulled out his phone with a theatrical flourish, thumbing through it with practiced ease. "I've got the texts to prove it right here." He held up the screen, showing me a carefully cropped screenshot of his conversation with Emma. Her words about a temporary solution, presented as an enthusiastic agreement. My heart hammered. This was his checkmate. The lie was so audacious, so complete, backed up by evidence. He was going to try and bulldoze me with it, but his timing was spectacularly, beautifully, fatally off. Because at that exact moment, another set of headlights cut through the gloom. Another car came crunching down the driveway, a familiar silver Honda sedan. Emma. She parked right behind Finn's truck, blocking him in. She got out of the car, and the look on her face was not one of a co-conspirator. It was the face of a Valkyrie. Her eyes were locked on Finn, burning with an icy fire that could have frozen the lake solid. She walked right past me, her focus absolute, and stopped a foot in front of my brother. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her words were cold, hard, and sharp as shards of glass. "What did you just say, Finn?" Finn was momentarily stunned speechless by her sudden appearance, but he recovered quickly, trying to fall back on his charm. "Emma, hey, great timing. I was just telling Mark the good news, that we're all on the same page now, thanks to you." "You are a liar," she said, echoing my own words, but with a power and a fury that silenced everyone. The two movers froze, looking back and forth between them. Amber took a visible step back. "You twisted my words, you manipulated my desire for peace, and you are not welcome in this house. I never, ever gave you permission. Now you will tell your hired help to get back in their truck, and you will get off my husband's property." Finn's jaw dropped. He was sputtering, his face turning a blotchy red. "But the texts, you said you'd think about it." "And I did think about it," she shot back, her voice ringing with clarity in the quiet morning air. "I thought about my husband and his grandfather and what it means to respect someone. The answer is no. The answer will always be no. Now get out." Finn, cornered, exposed, and utterly defeated, still refused to back down. He was a cornered rat, and they're the most dangerous. "You can't make us leave," he snarled, his voice a desperate whine. "We're here now. Our stuff is on that truck. What are you going to do?" Dave, the neighbor, had paddled his canoe silently to the shore. He got out and walked calmly toward the tense group, his presence radiating a quiet authority. "I think you should listen to the lady," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm a retired police officer, son, and what you're doing here isn't a family disagreement anymore. It's called criminal trespassing." That was it. That was the final piece. Dave's words, Emma's strength, it all clicked into place. This wasn't a family squabble anymore. This was a crime. My grandfather's words, old Tom's words, hard boundaries. I pulled out my own phone. My hands were perfectly steady now. The rage had burned away, leaving behind a cold, hard certainty. "You're right, Finn," I said, my voice ringing with a newfound clarity that surprised even me. "I can't make you leave, but they can." I dialed 911. Finn's face went from blotchy red to ghost white. Amber gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. A calm voice answered on the other end. 911, what is your emergency? I looked right into my brother's panicked, disbelieving eyes. "Yes," I said clearly. "I'd like to report a trespassing in progress at my home." The game was over. He had played his last card, and it was a bluff. He had lost, and we, together, had won. Chikchan Roy. Toi si viet tip ka chuyen mot kachlin mak tu diem dung truok du? Emo rong kak fan koi to them chiu sao. Kich tin va kam suk. Dam bow them it not 3002 to ka chuyen tiaron and hap den va tron ven han. The arrival of the sheriff's department cruiser, a single vehicle crunching slowly down the gravel driveway, changed the entire dynamic of the confrontation. The tense, messy family drama immediately snapped into the cold, clear focus of a legal matter. A uniformed deputy, a calm and professional woman in her late 30s with a name tag that read Johnson, stepped out of her car. She didn't rush. She assessed the scene with practiced eyes. The U-Haul, Finn's pickup, the two bewildered movers, my neighbor Dave standing near the shoreline, and the four of us in a tense standoff. She addressed me first, her voice even and neutral. "Sir, I received a call about a trespassing situation?" "Yes, officer," I said, relief making my voice stronger than it had been all morning. "This is my property. This is my brother, Finn, and his girlfriend, Amber. I have repeatedly told them they are not permitted to live here. They arrived this morning with a moving truck and were attempting to move in without my consent." Finn, seeing his chance to play the victim to an official audience, immediately jumped in. "Officer, this is a huge misunderstanding, a family disagreement. Mark is my brother. He's just emotional. We had an arrangement. His wife, Emma, she said it was okay." He gestured wildly toward Emma, as if expecting her to back him up. Officer Johnson turned her calm, unreadable gaze to Emma. "Ma'am, is that correct? Did you give these individuals permission to move in today?" Emma stood tall, her voice ringing with the clarity of absolute truth. "No, officer, I did not. My husband and I are in complete agreement. They are here against our explicit wishes. Last night, I told my brother-in-law that this was not an option. What they are doing here is without our consent." The deputy nodded slowly, her eyes flickering over to the moving truck, then back to Finn. His story was already falling apart. She then looked at the text messages on his phone that he was so eager to show. She glanced at them for no more than 3 seconds. "Sir," she said to Finn, her voice losing its initial neutrality and taking on a harder edge. "A text message about thinking about it does not constitute a lease agreement or legal permission to occupy a residence. You have been told to leave by the legal property owners. Your continued presence here now constitutes criminal trespassing. So, I'm going to give you 2 options and you need to choose one right now." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "Option 1. You direct these movers to pack up every single one of your belongings and you leave this property immediately. Option 2. I can place you and your girlfriend under arrest for trespassing. The choice is yours, but you're making it right now." The threat of a criminal record, of handcuffs and a holding cell, was the final brutal nail in the coffin of Finn's fantasy. The fight drained out of him completely, replaced by a sullen, childish resentment. His face was a mask of disbelief, the face of a man who had never in his life been truly told no and had it stick. Amber started to cry. Not the manipulative, calculated tears from the restaurant, but real, panicked sobs of someone whose entire future had just crumbled. The two movers, who had been standing by awkwardly, just looked at Finn, their expressions saying, "Are we getting paid for this mess?" "Fine," Finn muttered, kicking at a loose rock on the driveway. His voice was thick with venom. "We'll go. You happy now, Mark? You happy you tore your family apart over a stupid house?" "I didn't do this, Finn," I said, my voice cold and steady. "You did." The next 2 hours were the most excruciatingly awkward and quietly satisfying of my entire life. Under the watchful eye of Officer Johnson, who stood with her arms crossed by her cruiser, Finn and Amber had to direct the movers to take every box, every piece of furniture they had just unloaded with such triumphant glee, and put it all back on the truck. The box labeled nursery went back on, a symbol of their failed emotional blackmail. The cheap, plastic-framed photo of them, which Amber had tried to hang, was wrapped in a blanket and tossed unceremoniously into the pickup. It was a public, humiliating, and methodical retreat. Finn shot me venomous looks the entire time, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles bulging. Amber wouldn't look at anyone, her face buried in her hands as she sat in the passenger seat of the pickup. Little Lily, who had been sitting in the truck the whole time, was now outside, looking confused and scared. She pointed a small finger at the cabin. "Our new house?" she asked Amber in a tiny voice. Amber just shook her head and sobbed harder. I felt a sharp pang of sadness for the little girl. She was the only true innocent in this whole sordid, ugly mess. Finally, the truck was loaded. The heavy ramp slammed shut with a bang that echoed in the quiet woods like a gunshot. A definitive end. Finn paid the movers in cash, his movements jerky and angry. The big truck rumbled back up the driveway and disappeared onto the main road. Finn and Amber got into their pickup. Without a single backward glance, Finn peeled out, spitting gravel from his tires, a final impotent act of defiance. And then silence. The blessed, beautiful, hard-won silence of the lake returned. It was over. Officer Johnson walked over and gave me her card. "I'd strongly recommend changing the locks today, sir," she said kindly. "And you might want to consider having your lawyer send a formal no trespass order. Sometimes, family can be the biggest problem." "Thank you, officer," I said, shaking her hand with genuine gratitude. "Thank you for everything." After she left, Emma and I were finally alone on the porch. The massive surge of adrenaline drained away all at once, leaving us exhausted and shaky. Emma wrapped her arms around me from behind, resting her head on my back as we looked out at the now peaceful driveway. "I am so sorry, Mark," she whispered into my shirt. "I'm sorry I ever made you feel like you were alone in this. I'm sorry I didn't see what they were doing from the beginning." I turned in her arms and held her close, burying my face in her hair. "You were here when it counted, Em," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You were here. You showed up. That's all that matters." That night was a profound turning point. We didn't just feel like a married couple. We felt like a team, a true partnership forged in the crucible of this conflict. That evening, sitting by the fire, we didn't just rehash the day's events. We made plans. Emma, with her laptop open, researched local locksmiths and security system companies. I sat beside her, drafting the email we would send to my entire family. A clear, calm, and united statement, outlining the facts of what had happened and what our boundaries were moving forward. No ambiguity, no room for misinterpretation. We were building a fortress, but it wasn't a fortress of walls and locks designed to keep the world out. It was a fortress of shared principles, of mutual respect and trust. And for the first time, I knew, deep in my bones, that it was a fortress that could never be breached. The weeks that followed the cabin incident, as Emma and I came to call it, were a strange and jarring mixture of profound turmoil and deep, abiding peace. The peace was at the cabin, which now felt more ours than ever. The turmoil, predictably, was with my family. The day after we sent the carefully worded email to the entire extended family, my mother called. I saw her name flash on the screen and my stomach did its familiar clenching routine. Emma, who was sitting across the kitchen table from me, saw my expression. She got up, walked over, and put a hand on my shoulder. Then she reached down and tapped the speakerphone button on my phone. We were in this together. There were no more separate battles. "Hello, Mom," I said, my voice calm. There was no greeting, no preamble. "I have never, in my entire life, been so humiliated," she shrieked, her voice shrill and vibrating with a rage that was almost operatic. "You called the police? On your own brother? Your flesh and blood? You had him thrown out like a common criminal, and then you send that disgusting email, airing our family's private business to everyone. The whole family is talking. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I took a deep, steadying breath. The old Mark would have been defensive, apologetic. He would have tried to explain, to make her understand, to somehow salvage the relationship. But the old Mark was gone, burned away in the fire of the last few weeks. "Yes, Mom, I do know what I've done," I said calmly and clearly, Emma's hand a warm, steadying presence on my shoulder. "I protected my property from a person who was committing a crime. The fact that he's my brother doesn't change that fact. It makes his actions even more inexcusable. He was just trying to provide for his family," my mother screamed, her voice cracking with fury. "A family you clearly don't care about. He needed help, and you called the police on him. You have a choice to make, Mark. You will call your brother, you will apologize, you will let them use the cabin until they get on their feet, and you will fix this mess you have made. If you don't, you can consider yourself no longer a part of this family." The ultimatum, the final, desperate move of a manipulator who had lost control and was now trying to burn the whole house down. "Well, Mom," I said, my voice devoid of the emotion she so desperately wanted to provoke. "I'm sad to hear you feel that way. I truly am. But if the price of being in this family is allowing myself and my wife to be manipulated, disrespected, and to have our home stolen, then that's a price we're no longer willing to pay. The boundary is set. I hope one day you can understand that." The conversation is over. I hung up the phone. The silence that followed wasn't heavy or oppressive. It was light. It was clean. It was freeing. As my mother had promised, the fallout was swift and coordinated. We were bombarded with text messages and calls from a rotating cast of aunts, uncles, and cousins, all expressing their profound disappointment in me and my lack of loyalty. It was clear Finn and Amber had spent the night before the incident poisoning the well, painting a heart-wrenching picture of themselves as homeless victims and me as a heartless, cold-hearted monster. The email we sent, with its cold, hard facts, couldn't compete with their dramatic, emotional narrative. We ignored most of it. Then, about 2 weeks later, the whole rotten structure of Finn and Amber's life together completely collapsed. My sister, Linda, who had managed to stay mostly neutral throughout the ordeal, called me. She was the only one who had replied to our email with a simple, "I'm so sorry you guys went through that. They broke up," she said, her voice heavy and exhausted. It was a huge, messy public fight on social media. It was horrible. He's blaming her for being greedy and pushing him to take the cabin. She's blaming him for being a liar who promised her a fantasy life he couldn't deliver. Apparently, the harsh reality of having to find a real apartment on a real budget without the magical cabin solution had been too much for their fragile relationship to handle. Amber had packed up her things, taken little Lily, and moved back to her parents' house in another state, effectively cutting all ties. And Finn, with nowhere else to go and his tail between his legs, had slunk back to our parents' house. "He's miserable," Linda said with a sigh. "And he's making them miserable. All he does is sit on the couch, drinking their beer, and talking about how you ruined his life and his one chance at happiness." I felt a strange and complete lack of emotion hearing this. Not pity, not satisfaction, not even anger. Just a quiet, solid affirmation that we had done the right thing. We had refused to prop up a relationship that was built on a foundation of entitlement and delusion. With the family drama finally pushed to the perimeter of our lives, where it belonged, Emma and I focused inward. We followed through on all our plans. A new, Professional-grade security system was installed at the cabin, complete with cameras and motion sensors. Our lawyer sent a formal, certified letter of no trespass to Finn at my parents' address, making it crystal clear that any future appearance on the property would result in immediate prosecution. And we started our new project. Behind the cabin was my grandfather's old workshop. For years, it had been a place of quiet decay, filled with his dusty tools, half-finished projects, and the ghosts of his memory. We decided, together, to bring it back to life. We spent our autumn weekends consumed by the project. The first weekend, we just cleared it out, hauling out old lumber, empty paint cans, and years of accumulated dust. The next, we were sanding down the massive, scarred workbench that had been the centerpiece of his working life. I showed Emma how to use a power sander, and the sound of the tool and our shared laughter filled the space. I spent hours organizing his old tools, cleaning the rust from his hand planes, sharpening his chisels. Each tool held a memory, a lesson. Emma, who has a natural eye for design and light, planned the layout. We installed new, bright lighting, patched the leaky roof, and painted the walls a warm, welcoming white. The project became a powerful metaphor for our own lives. We were taking a piece of the past, a legacy that was in danger of falling into ruin, and we were restoring it, making it stronger, and building it into something new, something that was uniquely ours. The smell of fresh-cut wood, of paint and sawdust, filled the air, chasing away the last lingering ghosts of the conflict. The cabin started to feel truly ours, not just a place I had inherited, but a home we were actively creating, together. It's been a year now since that awful, defining morning. The seasons have turned, and so has the tide of our lives in a way I never could have anticipated. The workshop is finished. It's my favorite place on earth, even more than the cabin itself. It's a perfect blend of the past and the present. The old, worn workbench my grandfather built, its surface covered in the nicks and scars of a lifetime of work, stands against one wall, his perfectly restored tools hanging neatly above it. On the other side of the room is a bright, modern creative space where Emma has her potter's wheel and a large table for her art projects. It's a place of creation, of collaboration, of deep, abiding peace. My relationship with my parents and brother is, for all intents and purposes, over. It exists only as a dull, distant ache. I hear through my sister, Linda, that Finn is still living at home, still unemployed, still blaming the world for his problems. My parents still try to send guilt-laced messages through relatives on birthdays and holidays, but their words have lost their power. They are just noise from a distant shore, and we have learned to tune them out. Our marriage, however, has never been stronger. That trial by fire burned away all the small insecurities, all the petty miscommunications. We learned how to be a team in the truest sense of the word. We learned that a real partnership isn't about avoiding conflict, but about knowing, without a doubt, that you are facing that conflict from the same side of the line. Sometimes, when I'm sitting on the porch watching the sunset paint the lake with color, I think about little Lily. I hope she's okay wherever she is. I feel a pang of sadness that she was used as an innocent pawn in her parents' desperate, selfish game. But I've learned, through this long and painful process, that I am not responsible for the consequences of their choices. My responsibility was to my wife, to my grandfather's memory, and to my own self-respect. The other day, I was in the newly finished workshop, running my hand over the smooth, worn wood of the workbench my grandfather had leaned against 1,000 times. Emma came in, wiping clay from her hands on her apron, and stood beside me, lacing her fingers through mine. "You know," I said, looking around the beautiful, light-filled space we'd built together, "Grandpa left me a house, but I think we were the ones who finally made it a home." She leaned her head on my shoulder, her warmth a comforting, solid presence. "We did," she said softly. "We built this, together." I realized then that boundaries are not the walls of a prison, meant to keep people out. They are the foundations of a sanctuary, designed to protect the sacred space you need for the right people and the right things to flourish. They're about making sure your garden has enough sunlight to grow, free from the choking weeds of entitlement and disrespect. And our garden, right here by the lake, was finally, beautifully, and defiantly in full bloom. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. It was a hard lesson to learn, but a necessary one. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to draw a hard line with family to protect what was important to you? I'd be interested to hear about your own experiences. Please share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss what's next.